We're going to carry on learning about variables. So in the introduction it says, let's say we need a program that connects a user with a new job. We need the user's name, their salary, and their employment status. All of these pieces of information are stored in our program. We store information in variables, which are named location in memory. Naming a piece of information allows us to use that name later in order to access the information we stored in that name. Variables also give context and meaning to the data we're storing. The value 42 would be someone's age, a weight in pounds, or the number of orders placed. With a name, we know the value 42 is age, weight in pounds, or orders placed. So these are going to be, or these are examples of names of variables. In Java, we specify the type of information we're storing. Primitive data types, and this is really important. So primitive data types are types of data built into the Java system. So we must declare a variable to reference it within our program. Declaring a variable requires that we specify the type and the name. And we have an example here. We have, if you remember from the previous lessons, this is a comment, and this is the type of the data that this variable is going to store. So this is the name of the variable, and this is the type that this variable is going to store. So this is just declaring the variable, so declaring it. Later on we're going to see about declaring and initializing. So right now we just say, okay, this space in memory is going to be called age, and it's going to hold a data type int. The above variable types are int, double, and boolean. So int, double, and boolean. This lesson will introduce these built-in types and more. The names of the variables are age, salary requirement, and is employed. So age, salary requirement, and is employed. These variables don't have any associated value. To assign a value to a variable, we use the assignment operator, which is this equal, as we know it in usual or in math. Okay. So we have age equals 85. Now it means that this variable is storing this value, which is 85. It's common to declare a variable and assign the value in one line. So for example, to assign 2011 to a variable named year Codecademy was founded, of type int, we write int, which is the data type that this variable is going to end up holding. So this is the data type, this is the name of the variable. We use the equal sign to assign a value to this variable, and then we give it the value, and we end it with a semicolon. Now, if we have a look at the instructions, it goes like this. In creator.java, which is the name of our file, we have defined some variables related to James Gosling, the creator of Java. Inside main, use the system.out.println to print out the variable name. So we see we have a class called creator, and this creator class is inside our file called creator.java. We have the main method. Here on line 3 we have a variable of type string whose name is name, and the value stored in that variable is James Gosling. On line 4 we have a variable of type integer whose name is year created, and the value of that variable is 1995. Now the instructions say to use the system.out.println, so this is the statement that prints something on the screen. We're going to end it with a semicolon, as we well know that any statement in Java must end with. And we have to print out the value that the variable name holds. To do that, we use the name of the variable, and we're going to run it. And here on the output screen, we see James Gosling. Because on line 5, we just printed the name, so we printed variable called name, whose value, so the value stored in this variable, is this one, which is exactly what we got on the screen, because we used the system.out.println statement, which we know by now that it prints text, or it prints something to the screen. Now, if we have a look at the instruction number 2, it says use the same command to print out year created. So we're gonna use the same command, and we're gonna copy the name of the other variable, which is year created. And if we're gonna run it, we get James Gosling, which is the result of line number 5, and 1995, which is the result of number 6 of the code here on line 6. We finish this, we can move on to the next lesson. Okay, we are going to learn now about ints, so integer data types. The first type of data we will store is the whole number. So whole numbers are very common in programming. You often see them used to store ages or maximum sizes, or the number of times some code has been run, among many other uses. In Java, whole numbers are stored in the int primitive data type, so int. Ints hold positive numbers, negative numbers, and 0. They do not store fractions or numbers with decimals in them. So an integer can be either positive or negative, including 0, as long as it doesn't have a decimal point or a fractional point. It has to be a whole number, be it positive or negative, including 0. So now to declare a variable of type int, we use the int keyword before the variable name. So this is a comment here. We have the data type, and then is followed by the name of the variable, and is ended with a semicolon. And then on the next line here, where it says assignment, so we assign a value to the variable we just created. So on this line, we take the variable, we use the assignment operator, the equal sign in our case here, and we give it the value 1996. Then on the following line, it says declaration and assignment. On the same line, so what we've done on this line and on this line could have been done in one line, as it shows here. Int, so you give it a data type, you give it the name of the variable, use the equal sign, the assignment operator, and then you give it the value. You end it with a semicolon as usual. Now, if we have a look at the instructions, it says the file countComment.java has a number of comments in it. So this is our file. In your head, count the number of comments. Then inside the main method, declare a variable called numComments that holds how many comments you counted. So let's count the number of the comments we see. What we have to look for is like this notation here, which tells us, okay, this is a comment. So we have 1 here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So we know we have 6 comments in total. So it says inside the main method, declare a variable called numComments. So we're going to do it here, int num comments equals to 6, however many comments we counted. Okay, if I'm gonna run this, we see we already completed instruction number 1, and then it tells us in instruction number 2 to print out the num comments. So we're gonna use the system.out.println notation, that statement, and we're gonna print the variable called num comments, which is gonna print on the screen 6. It's gonna print on the screen its contents. Okay, if we're gonna run this, we get on the screen number 6, and this was this lesson. Okay, we're gonna move on to the next lesson, and now we're gonna talk about doubles. So doubles is another data type. It's still a numerical data type, but it's a bit different than the int that we've just seen previously. So whole numbers don't accomplish what we need for every program. So what if we wanted to store the price of something? We need a decimal point. What if we wanted to store the world's population? That number would be larger than the int type can hold. The double primitive data type can help. So double can hold decimals as well as very large and very small numbers. The maximum value is this number, which I'm not even gonna have an attempt at reading it, which is approximately 17 followed by 307 zeros. So go figure that number. The minimum value is 4.9 e minus 324, which is 334 decimal places. So that is huge. Imagine having a number with 334 decimal places. That is a very small number. Anyways, to declare a variable of type double, we use the double keyword in the declaration. So like we've seen before, declaring an integer, this time we're gonna use, instead of int, we're gonna use the keyword double. We're gonna use the we're gonna give it a name to this variable. We're gonna use the assignment operator, and then we're gonna assign it a value. We're gonna give it a value. In our case, 8.99. This is a perfectly double number, as it, well, double type, which has a decimal point. Doubles can have values bigger than what an int could hold. So double GDP and is this number. We're going to learn a little bit later about the actual difference between int and double, but for now it's just very simple to understand that int is going to store whole numbers, whereas doubles, they're going to store fractional or decimal numbers. Okay, if we have a look at the instructions, it says as of 2016, Android has 81.7% of the market share for mobile and mobile operating systems. Create a variable called Android share that holds this percentage as a double. Okay, so we have the class, we have the main method. Inside the main method, we're gonna say double Android share, and we're gonna use 81.7. Okay, 81.7 to represent the market share for mobile operating systems owned by Android. If we're gonna run this, this has now completed, and then it says print out the Android share to the console. To do this, we use the system.out.println. We end it with a semicolon, and we put in the parentheses, we're going to use the name of the variable. We're going to run this now, and we get on the screen 81.7. We're going to move on to the next lesson. Now we're going to talk about the data type called Boolean. So often our programs face the question that can only be answered with a yes or a no. Is the oven on? Is the light green? Did I eat breakfast? These questions are answered with a Boolean, a type that references one of two values, true or false. We declare Boolean variables by using the keyword Boolean before the variable name. We have an example here, so we use the data type. In our case now we're learning about Boolean, so we're going to use the keyword Boolean. And then we have the name of the variable. Java is a compiled language. We use the assignment operator and we give it the value true. Now on the next line we have another variable. We're declaring another variable and we are also initializing it because we're giving it a value. Now we have the Boolean data type followed by the name of the variable followed by the assignment operator, and then we give it the value, the actual value that this variable is storing. Of course, we end it with a semicolon. Now it says in the future lessons, we'll see how Boolean values help navigate decisions in our programs. Now, if we have a look at the instructions, it goes like this. Create a variable called int can hold decimals. Okay, I'm gonna copy that. Set it to true if the int type can hold a decimal number. Set it to false if the int type cannot do this. Now, if we look here in the boolean.java file, we have the class called booleans. We have the main method. Inside this main method, we're going to declare a variable. Now, we have to declare the type as being Boolean. And we're going to give it the name that our instructions tell us to. And then we have to set it to true or to false, depending on the answer that we're going to give here, which is set it to true if the int type can hold a decimal number, or set it to false if the int type cannot do this. So I think you would agree with me if we are to put it as false, because we know from just a few minutes ago when we learned that int cannot hold decimal numbers or fractional numbers. So this should be the answer. We're going to run it to see whether this is true or not. And you can see the box got ticked here, so we don't have any errors. And now we're going to print on the screen this variable that we've just created. We're going to use the statement system.out.println. We're going to end it with a semicolon, and in the parentheses we're going to put the name of the variable. We're going to run it again and we get false. So we get false because that is the value of our variable. We're going to move on to the next lesson. We're going to talk about a data type called char or char. This one, in case it confuses you, comes from character, okay? So you'll see in a bit what this data type can store, okay? How do we answer questions like, what grade did you get on the test? Or what letter does your name start with? The char data type, or the char data type, I'm going to call it from now on char, so there's not going to be too much confusion around naming it differently every time. So the char data type can hold any character, like a letter, or a space, or a punctuation mark. It must be surrounded by single quotes. So for example, we use the data type, which is char. We use the name of the variable, and since we know that we want this variable to hold a letter, just a single one, we know automatically that the data type should be char. Okay, So we have the data type, we have the name of the variable, we have the assignment operator, and then we have the actual value that this variable is gonna store. Of course, ended with a semicolon. Next, the following example, char first letter equals P. So in single quotes, char punctuation equal exclamation mark, ending with a semicolon, and of course enclose it in single quotes. Now if we have a look at the instructions, it goes like this: create a variable called expected grade of type char. So right from the beginning, we know that the data type is supposed to be char, and the name of that variable is expected grade. Fill it with a single letter representing the grade you think you would get in a graded Java course, where the grades A, B, C, D, and F are possible. I'm gonna be very optimistic and I'm gonna say we're gonna go for an A. We're gonna get there. So I've used the data type, I've used the name of the variable, I've used the assignment operator, and I've given it a value. And because it's of type char, I've enclosed it in single quotes and ended it as usual with a semicolon. If I'm gonna run this now, we see we don't have any errors. And then the following instruction, it says print your expected grade variable. How are we gonna do this? Well, we're gonna use the system.out.println. Probably by now we are all kind of used to it with this syntax. So we're gonna print on the screen our expected grade, which we said is gonna be an A. And once we run this, we should see an output of A here on this screen. I'm gonna run it, and we get exactly that, because that is the value that this variable is storing. And since we say print this variable, it's not printing the actual name of the variable, it's printing instead the contents of that variable. Okay, we're gonna move on to the next lesson. We are gonna talk about strings. Strings is another data type. So far we have learned primitive data types, which are the simplest types of data with no built-in behavior. Our programs will also use strings, which are objects, instead of primitives. So if you remember everything that we've seen now in this video, the data types were of type primitive. When it comes to strings, these are objects. So we're gonna learn about objects later on in the course, but for now, just understand that strings, so data type of type string, are objects. And objects have built-in behavior. Strings hold sequences of characters. We've already seen instances of a string. For example, when you printed out hello world. Yeah. If you notice, when we're dealing with strings, we are enclosing the value or the text. We are enclosing it in double quotes. Just like with a primitive, we declare the variable by specifying the type first. So we specify the type. What type of data is our variable gonna store? Well, it's gonna be string, because if we look here at the contents, it's clear to us that this is a string, okay? So we put here string, see it starts with a capital S, then we give the name of the variable, we use the assignment operator, and then in double quotes, we are giving it the actual value that we want to store in this variable. We ended with a semicolon. Now, if we have a look at the instructions, it says create a variable called opening lyrics that holds yesterday all my troubles seem so far away. Yes, probably, what is this? The Beatles, probably. If I'm not mistaken, I'm gonna have a look when once I finish this this tutorial. So we're gonna use the data type of the variable. We're gonna use the data type string. We're gonna use then the name of the variable. This is the assignment operator, and we are gonna give it this value, okay? We're gonna end it, of course, with a semicolon. So we've created a variable called opening lyrics. We've assigned it this. So yesterday, now all that text. We're gonna run it. And we see the first instruction is perfectly fine. And then on the instruction number 2, it says call the system.out.println. So we want to use this to print opening lyrics. So to print the contents of our variable of type string. We have to end this with a semicolon. We're gonna run it, and there you go. Of course, we get the contents of this variable. Let's move on to the next lesson. We are gonna have a look at static check-in, okay? The Java programming language has static typing. Java programs will not compile if a variable is assigned a value of an incorrect type. So this is a bug, specifically a type declaration bug. Okay, so a bug means some sort of an error in the logic of the program or in the syntax of the program. What it means is, for example, if we want to store, or if we declare an integer of or a variable of type integer called age, and then that age we set it equal to the string Java. Obviously the string Java is not the same type as the integer that we declared as being the type of the variable. This is gonna be, if it's not clear already, this is gonna clear up in a second once we do some exercises. Okay, we go on. Bugs are dangerous. They cause our code to crash or produce incorrect results. Static typing helps because bugs are caught during programming rather than during execution of the code. The program will not compile if the declared type of the variable does not match the type of the assigned value. It's exactly what I said before. So for example, if we have a variable of type int, so we declare it as an int, we know that int is supposed to store only whole numbers. And then that variable, we give it the name of greeting, and then the actual value that we want to put in this variable, this is type string. So this type, which is string, is not compatible with the int type that we've declared. So these are different types which are going to cause bugs. The string hello world cannot be held in a variable of type int. For example, for the example above, we see an error in the console at compilation. So we see incompatible types. String cannot be converted to int. Int greeting, hello world, of course, what we just discussed before. When bugs are not caught at compilation, they interrupt the execution of the code by causing runtime errors. The program will crash. Java's static typing helps programmers avoid runtime errors and thus have much safer code that is free from bugs. If we have a look at the instructions, it says in the mess.java file, which is this one, we have declared a bunch of variables with a wrong type, excuse me. Try to compile the file using the command javac mess.java. So if you remember, we did this in the previous, in one of the previous lessons at the beginning, where we compiled from the command line. So let's type this, javac mess.java. Okay, so we're gonna do this. And exactly, so we've done this, we've compiled it, and it says change the types to the variables so that they correspond with the type of the assignment value. So for example, the year, so if we have a look here, we have string year, 2001 double. So these, all the values that have been assigned to each variable here, from starting from line 3 all the way to line 7, they are a bit jumbled up, they're a bit mixed, and they do not correspond one with another. So for example, on line 3, we have the variable declared as a string, but actually the value that we've put inside this variable is of type int. So of course that's gonna cause a problem, that's gonna cause an error, okay? Okay, so it says, instruction number 2 says change the types of the variables so that they correspond with the type of the assignment values. Okay, so we should put Shrek, we should put it here, title, well, actually this is supposed to be, okay, so Boolean, actually I'm gonna copy them once more, okay, and then we're gonna do it here. Okay, so the title, we're supposed to be putting first of all the year. Okay, if we've said it's a string and the year was 2001, in order to make this a string we have to enclose it in double quotes. The title, oh, sorry, I think I got this wrong. So it says change the types of the variables so that they correspond with the type of the assignment values. So in fact, we're not supposed to be messing around with the types here. We're not supposed to be messing around with the values. We're just supposed to match. So for example, this is an int. We have to change this to an int. This is a string, so the value that is stored in this variable is a string, so therefore we'll have to put this as a string. This is a char because it's just one letter, one character, and is enclosed in single quotes, so this is a char. This is gonna be a double. And the last one is gonna be a Boolean, because it has the value true. So I'm gonna try and run it once more, and it looks like everything is fine now. And then if we have a look at the instruction number 3, it says compile the file again. Look at how it compiles now with no errors. So I've just pressed on my keyboard, I've just pressed the upper arrow, and it's gonna display on the screen the last command that you run. So now if I'm gonna press enter, as you can see, we didn't get any more errors. So now our file compiled properly without any errors. We're gonna move on to the next lesson, and we are gonna talk about naming variables. Okay, so let's imagine we're storing a user's name for their profile. Which code example do you think is better? String, so we have the type, data equals Delilah, yeah, or string name of user equals Delilah. I think you would agree with me if you were to say that this, so the second example, is a bit better, because just by reading the name of the variable we kind of get the idea of what does this value represent. So this value is the name of a user, okay? Whereas data can really mean anything. So I guess this lesson is going to be about naming the variables in a meaningful way, in a descriptive way. If we carry on, we say, while both of these files will compile, the second example is way more easy to understand. Readers of the code will know the purpose of the value Delilah. Naming variables, according to convention, leads to clear, readable, and maintainable code. When someone else is when someone else or our future self reads the code, there's no confusion about the purpose of a variable. In Java, variable names are case sensitive. So case sensitive like so. My height. It makes it much easier to read as opposed to this one, my height. Okay? So in Java, variable names are case sensitive. My height, so written like this, is a different variable from my height written like this. The length of a variable name is unlimited, but we should keep it concise while keeping the naming clear. A variable starts with a valid letter or a $sign or an underscore. No other symbols or numbers can begin a variable name. So a letter or a $sign or an underscore. First place, and so written like this, yeah, with a 1, and asterisk gazer are not valid variable names. Variable names of only one word are spelled all in lowercase letters. Variable names of more than one word have the first letter lowercase, while the beginning of the letter of each subsequent words is capitalized. This style of capitalization is called camel case. So we see some comment here. Boolean is human. This could be true or false. Okay. Now we have some other examples, bad styles. So this was a good example. This is a bad example. So no capitalization for the new word. So we have Boolean is human. Is indeed slightly harder to read or to comprehend. Whereas if you look at this one right from the beginning, you know where there's a new word starting and is much easier to read. Now the first letter, the first word should be lowercase. So is human with a capital I. I think it will still work, but it's supposed to be that's a good practice if it's lowercase. And underscores don't separate words. Boolean, so these are bad examples, okay? So bad styles. Now, if we have a look at the instructions, it says in the bad names.java file, we declared variables with confusing names. Run the file and look at the error messages you get when you're trying to compile. So we're going to run the file, okay? And first of all, we are looking on line number 3 here. Already we see the error, okay? So it says first name, okay? It doesn't work because it has a 1 in there, okay? So it's supposed to be slightly different. So we have an error here on line 3. Next, what does it say? Some of the variable names are illegal. Change the ones that are preventing the file from compiling. So I guess we're gonna replace that 1, so like in the digit 1, number 1, with first name, and probably this one as well. It can't start with a dot, okay? Okay, so those two were the issues on line 3. So it can't start with a number and it can't start with a dot because this one was starting with a dot, okay? And we have run the program and it looks like everything runs just fine. We're getting this text that says the program runs. We're going to move on to the next lesson. And this is all about the review. So creating and filling variables is a powerful concept that allows us to keep track of all kinds of data in our program. In this lesson, we learned how to create and print several different data types in Java, which you will use as you create bigger and more complex programs. We covered int, which stores whole numbers. We covered double, which stores bigger whole numbers and decimal values. Boolean, which stores true and false. Char, which stores single characters using single quotes. String, which stores multiple characters using double quotes. Static typing, which is one of the safety features of Java. And we've also covered the variable naming conventions. Practice declaring variables and assigning values to make sure you have a solid foundation for learning more complicated and exciting Java concepts. So if we have a look at the instructions, it says like this: in the file myprofile.java, which is this file. So this file contains a class that represents our hiring profile as presented to potential employers. In the main method, create a variable called name that holds your name as a sequence of characters. Okay, so we are gonna go into the main method. Since we want to store a name, we're gonna the type is gonna be string. We're gonna give a name to the variable, and I'm gonna put my name in there. Okay. We're gonna run this. If we have a look at the second instructions, it says create a variable called age that holds your age as a whole number. So if we want to store a whole number, we're gonna use the type int age, and we're gonna say, what should we say? 18. Now, if we're gonna run this as well, everything looks fine. The instruction number 3 says create a variable called desired salary that holds your desired salary per year to a precision of 2 decimal points. Okay, so we're gonna say double desired salary, and let's say, okay, so like so, 60k, okay, with a precision of 2 decimal points. Let's see if the program is gonna be happy with that. It's happy. Create a variable called gender that holds a single character, M for male, F for female, N for none, O for other. Okay, so we're gonna use the data type char. So the name of the variable is gonna be gender. We use the assignment operator, and then in single quotes, if you remember, we have to, whatever value we're gonna end up in a variable of type char, we have to put it in single quotes. And in my case, I'm gonna put F. Okay, I'm gonna run this now, and everything looks fine. So far, so good. Instruction number 5 says create a variable called looking for job that holds whether or not you're currently open to job offers. And because this is either true or false, we're gonna give this the data type of Boolean. Looking for job equals true. Okay, we're gonna run this as well, and that is the end of our lesson on variables. Okay,